Gratitude is one of the most strongest forms of power in attracting good things. You know, if you truly feel grateful for the things in your life, I always felt grateful for even the small things. I always used to celebrate the small things. Now I might be celebrating the bigger things, but I always celebrate every little good thing that would happen to me in my life. Even before I had any kind of money or any of that, I would celebrate and I would feel grateful for it, and it just gave me more. And this is exactly the same thing that's happening right now. I still remain grateful, and more comes.
Your job as an actor is to give it your best shot every time. So yes, I'm going into it with the idea that I'll play it to the best of my ability, and they wouldn't give it to me, the role, if they didn't think I was capable of pulling it off. Or I wouldn't take it if I didn't think I was capable of pulling it off.
How many of you feel like I've made this talk before? Can I see your hand, please? Several hundred times. I made it yesterday. You know what I did between yesterday and today? I spent over 6 hours getting ready for today. You see, I think it would be arrogant if I thought I could stand up and spit it out just because I did it yesterday or hundreds of times. That's arrogance. That's when Buster Douglas knocks out Mike Tyson. That's when an expansion team in Houston beats an established NFL team in Dallas. I dare not. Look at the people here, several thousand. I'm taking over an hour. That's several thousand hours of time. Where would my integrity be if I came here unprepared to make something, a presentation that could make a difference in your life? There is no way. You gotta prepare for it, ladies and gentlemen.
My advice to young chefs from the age of 16 to sort of 29, 30 is 14 years of a sponge. You're absorbing knowledge. Don't take a job for the sake of money. Don't worry about earning £500 a month or a year more somewhere else. Go and get knowledge, because that becomes a bigger passport for everything. The money will come once you've mastered your craft and you become incredibly talented. Work for big chefs and find a different level of comfort. When things get too comfortable and you're still living with your parents and you've still got your first job and you don't want to move out because everything's too comfortable, get out. Put yourself in a strange situation in the middle of Barcelona. Put yourself in the middle of Paris, put yourself in the middle of Belgium and see what's available. It's amazing how much confidence it gives you, and more importantly, it's great to sort of eat and travel at the same time. Fantastic.
I tried working for somebody when I was very young, and they fired me.
Right, and ice cream.
Right, and it was a very, very profoundly, affected me profoundly, and I just said, I'm never working for anybody again. It doesn't mean your life is easier. In fact, you have to have a lot of sacrifices on the road to success, and a lot of failures along the way. I just find it a more interesting way to spend your time. And I really believe in this concept of money buys freedom.
Right.
And so, you know, I think it's a very noble pursuit for some percentage of the people out there, but not for everybody. Because you have to sacrifice a lot for the period that you're working on your business. And not everybody wants to do that. And I think you find that in your own. You start down that path, and if it's too much of a sacrifice, you revert back to being an employee. It's very noble to do that too, but it's not the same thing. It takes a long time to set yourself free working for somebody else.
Every single person, when they're in their teens, in their early 20s, they care so much about other people and how they're perceived and what impression they make. And I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be good at everything and be a good student and be prettier and skinnier and successful and all these things. And I cared about what people said about me and how they felt about me. And as I get older, I just realized that other people won't make me happy. It has to be from within me, and I need to keep doing whatever makes me happy. And whoever responds to that, great. Whoever doesn't respond to that, it's fine too. Mm-hmm. But the less I care about other people's opinions, the better I feel about myself, and the more I do things that make me happy.
I'm getting more and more intrigued by mindset, because I used to think of it as fluffy, like self-help, and now I think of it more as strategy. What's your strategy in life? Somebody asked me on Instagram after I posted this, Gary, if the mindset has been skewed, how can you bring it back? And I answered by surrounding yourself with people who have the mindset you aspire to. My friends, please understand that mindset is controllable in the same way that all our opinions are controllable. The key is to add more people with optimism and cut people with negativity. It's very, very simple. Now, it's very hard to cut people with pessimism, cynicism, and negativity when they are the people that are the closest to you, parents, siblings, spouse. But the bottom line is, if you're asking the question, I'm gonna give you the answer. The answer is add more people with positivity and optimism and cut people with pessimism and cynicism. Who you surround yourself matters. What content you consume matters. I basically suffocate myself for a long period of my time and created an environment that was based on offense and optimism, and now I know no different. Please do the same for you. Make that move. Mold, and I mean mold, your mindset by what you consume and with whom you consume it.
You got to make a commitment to service. You got to make a commitment to, like, hey, I have a target. I know that when we don't achieve targets here in my office, the first thing I ask, regardless, the internet department, if it's my accounting department on collections, or it's my sales department, I'm going to ask a question. What is the target? No target results in no sales. So if you're in parts, if you're in service, look, have a target. Measure that target hourly. If you really want to get results, measure your target every hour to see what did we get in the last 60 minutes. I promise you, do those two simple things. Don't even learn anything about how to sell anybody anything. Have a target, measure it every hour, and I guarantee your sales will come up.
When you're asleep, ladies and gentlemen, you need your dreams. I'm here to tell you that when you're wide awake, you also need your dreams. You must have your goals. You'll never make it as a wandering generality. You must become a meaningful specific. If you're going to work tomorrow because that's what you did yesterday, you're not going to be as good tomorrow as you were yesterday, because now you're 2 days older and no closer to the goal which you do not have. You can't make it as a wandering generality.
The only thing that stops you from getting what you want in life is the bullshit story you tell yourself of why you can't have it. You get that? What stops you back is the story, because the story stops you from getting honest. And if you can't get honest with yourself, there's no way you can go. Imagine like this, success in sales and life, it's like a roadmap, right? You know where you want to go, and you have this perfect strategy, the straight line to get there. It's a perfect strategy. It's going to get you there every single time. But if you don't know your starting point, if you're not getting honest with where you actually are, it doesn't matter how powerful the strategy is, and it doesn't matter how powerful your goal is. I'm going to ask you to set a goal today, right? A 60-day goal. And let's say you really set this goal, and I'll show you how to do it in a brilliant way. So it's visceral. So it makes you really feel it. You see it, you sense it, you smell the goal. That's step one. I'm going to teach you the straight line, which is your strategy to get to your goal. But if you're not honest with where you are right now, your starting point, the map is worthless. There's 3 things that you need to know: where you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. Those are the 3 things you must have to take advantage of any opportunity. I'm going to give you the strategy. I'm going to ask you to tell me exactly where you want to go for yourself. You got to get honest. Don't blame the boss. Don't blame the leads. Don't blame your job. Don't blame the industry you're in. Just get honest. If you don't like your industry, find another one.
My thinking is so superior, and my knowledge is so positive, and my logic is so wise until it clashes with their mentality, which is down here and I'm up there. So by me being so high, I can see more and see farther than you. And you're looking up at me saying, Ali, don't do it. Ali, please stop me when it hurts. And you're on a job making 60, 70 pounds a week, or whoever this guy is. Never been out of the country, not known in his own neighborhood. Ali, don't do it. But I'm at such a high level until I don't think like you. I'm not like you. I know I say you, I mean the other person.
But you know why they say that. I mean, it's for the best possible reasons, though.
They fear and they are wary. It looks dangerous to them.
That's
but
right.
It's not really that dangerous to me.
In the 18th century, there was something that spread across Europe and eventually made its way to America called puerperal fever, also known as the Black Death of childbed. Basically, what was happening is women were giving birth, and they would die within 48 hours after giving birth. this Black Death of childbirth was the ravage of Europe, and it got worse and worse and worse over the course of over a century. In some hospitals, it was as high as 70% of women who gave birth who would die as a result of giving birth. But this was the Renaissance. This was the time of empirical data and science, and we had thrown away things like tradition and mysticism. These were men of science, these were doctors. And these doctors and men of science wanted to study and try and find the reason for this Black Death of childbed, and so they got to work studying, and they would study the corpses of the women who had died. And in the morning they would conduct autopsies, and then in the afternoon they would go and deliver babies and finish their rounds. And it wasn't until somewhere in the mid-1800s that Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, father of Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, realized that all of these doctors who were conducting autopsies in the morning weren't washing their hands before they delivered babies in the afternoon. And he pointed it out and said, "Guys, you're the problem." And they ignored him and called him crazy for 30 years. Until finally somebody realized that if they simply washed their hands, it would go away. And that's exactly what happened. When they started sterilizing their instruments and washing their hands, the Black Death of childbed disappeared. My point is, the lesson here is, sometimes you're the problem. We've seen this happen all too recently with our new men of science and empirical studiers and these men of finance who are smarter than the rest of us until the thing collapsed. And they blamed everything else except themselves. And my point is take accountability for your actions. You can take all the credit in the world for the things that you do right, as long as you also take responsibility for the things you do wrong. It must be a balanced equation. You don't get it one way and not the other. You get to take credit when you also take accountability.
When I decided to do this, I first talked to my wife, who is sitting here in the audience, and she had married a relatively stable, goofy, but still relatively stable person working at a Wall Street firm. I worked at a quantitative hedge fund, and this was a hard decision. And I was looking for the right framework in which to make that kind of important decision. And the right framework I found is a regret minimization framework. And so that's just a nerdy way of saying that you want to project yourself to age 80. And then think back over your life, and if you're 80, what are you want to minimize the number of regrets you have throughout that period of time. I think this is something a lot of people do, maybe subconsciously. Very few people probably name it regret minimization framework because most people are healthier than that. But it was a very clear way for me to think about making that kind of life decision, and the way it helped was, I thought, okay, if I go do this thing and participate in this thing called the internet that I genuinely believe is going to be a big deal, and if I fail, am I going to regret having tried and failed? And I knew the answer to that was no. But I also knew that if I didn't try, that I would always regret that. I would always wonder, and it would haunt me until that mythical day, which I actually hope will come.
I talk to so many smart, fantastic, ambitious, idealistic, hard-working kids, and they're right out of college, they're in their entry-level jobs, and I'll ask them, how's it going? And they'll say, I think I'm gonna quit. And I'm like, why? They say to me, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months, right? They treat the sense of fulfillment or even love like it's a scavenger hunt, like it's something you look for. My millennial friends, they've gone through so many jobs. They're either getting fired, it was mutual, or they're quitting because they're not making an impact, or they're not finding the thing they're looking for, they're not feeling fulfilled, as if it's a scavenger hunt. Love, a job you find joy from, is not something you discover. It's not like, I found love.
Here it is. I found a job I love. That's not how it works. Both of those things require hard work. You are in love because you work very hard every single day of your life to stay in love. You find a job that brings you ultimate joy because you work hard every single day to serve those around you, and you maintain that joy. It's not a discovery. But the problem is this sense of impatience. It's as if an entire generation is standing at the foot of a mountain. They know exactly what they want. They can see the summit. What they can't see is the mountain. This large, immovable object. That doesn't mean you have to do your time. That's not what I'm talking about. Take a helicopter climb, I don't care, but there's still a mountain. Life, career fulfillment, relationships are journeys. The problem is, this entire generation has an institutionalized sense of impatience, and do they have the patience to go on the journey to maintain love, to feel fulfilled, or do they just quit and on to the next, dump and on to the next, ghost and on to the next?
A lot of people do not have the courage to try to start a business, and all I would say, I mean, I've written a book called Screw It, Just Do It, and it basically is trying to say to people, just give it a try. Actually, sometimes a very, very small amount of money is all that's needed to start a company. I mean, my mother found a bracelet on the street and she handed it into the police station, and after 3 months the police let us sell it, and you know, the couple of $100 was, you know, really critical at a critical time in the development of our business. So all I say, just give it a go, and good luck on that one.
Many people have this idea, I want to achieve something great. Or be somebody great, and they neglect the step that leads to greatness. They don't honor this step at this moment because they have this idea of some future moment where they're going to be great.
Right.
Some people believe I'm doing great work. I mean, I am, because the consciousness is moving through this form. I don't feel personally responsible for what I do as such. But even there, it is small steps. When the writing happens, there's a notepad and a pen, and there's the present moment, and there's the stillness, very small. There's not some idea, I'm going to create a work that's going to change everybody's consciousness. No, I'm just true to this moment. What is this moment requires? It's a blank sheet of paper, and a pen, and the stillness. It's a small thing. It's all a sequence of very small moments. And by being true to the small moment, something great arises.
There are 4 levels of learning. Okay, let me tell you what the levels are. Some of you might know, if you've been through any self-development, this is some very basic stuff, but it's important here. The first level is called being unconsciously incompetent. And what that means is this: when you first start doing something, you know so little about it, you basically know nothing. You don't know what you don't know. This is a very scary spot to be in. When you're thrown into a situation and you're a complete novice, you say, geez, I'd love to get better at this, but I haven't the slightest idea what I don't know. Everyone follow that concept? This is where most people start off, okay? The next level is becoming consciously incompetent. That means that you're like, Jesus Christ, I don't know anything. You're like, there's this, there's that, there's all these strategies. They all sound great. I don't know them. That's the next level. Next level above that is called being consciously competent. Consciously competent means that you're good at something, but you can't really do it with your eyes closed yet. You're good, but it requires all your focus and your mental energy. Like, remember when we were kids growing up, you learned to tie your shoe. In the beginning, you like tie your shoe, like you're putting your things across, and someone says, excuse me, like, don't interrupt me. You can't tie your shoe and have a conversation at the same time, right? That's when you're consciously competent in something. It requires all your conscious focus. The next level above that is called being unconscious competence. And that means when you're really, really great at something, you can do it without thinking about it. And the only way to get from conscious competence to unconscious competence is through practice. There's no other way. By drilling it into your head again and again and again and again and again until your brain just clicks, and all of a sudden you're using the unconscious part of your mind, which is infinitely more powerful than your conscious mind.
Problem is, if you have the greatest hammer and the greatest screwdriver and the greatest wrench, the greatest, in front of you, If you don't use them properly, you will lose.
Right.
If there's a nail that I have to put in that ground, but I take the wrench and I hit it when the hammer was right there, it still comes down to the practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be good at your craft, and you have to love if you don't love sales, if you don't love it, you have no chance. Because it's so hard, it's so painful, there's so much rejection.
Right.
So those are the things I think about.
So technology is clearly an enabler, as you've just said there, though.
Yes.
The person is equally important. And
more important.
Right. And going back to
I just apologize for jumping in, but let me make it perfectly straight. If I go play Roger Federer right now in tennis, and I have the greatest tennis racket ever made, like taken from the Mars' new resources,
right.
and he took a John McEnroe 1974 tennis racket, he would whip my ass. Like, I'm crushing salespeople that have every Salesforce, every one of your competitors, 37 features, upgraded, went to every pro conference, watching this. I will beat their ass in sales every day of the week.
Right.
Pure talent.
I haven't actually been given a piece of advice that I can recall right now, but I guess when anyone asks me, like, what should I do? I'm just like, just do anything. Anything will lead to something else, and you just got to get out there and take a chance. Even if it's unpaid work, whatever it is, it will lead to something better, so do everything.
Do everything?
Yep, do it all.
Just this, I have an insane belief in my own ability to manifest things. Insane belief, that I think it's ultimately complete sanity, but I believe we're creators, and I believe we create with every thought and every word. Every moment is pregnant with the next moment of your life.
A lot of times I'll be in a 200-mile run or something like that, and I'm all jacked up. Body's broken, mind's broken, spirit's broken. I started to say, what if I can pull this off? When I first walked into the Navy SEAL recruiter's office, he looked at me and said, there's only been 35 African Americans in 70 years make it through. You know what I said to myself? What if I can be the 36th? It's the what if I can pull off a miracle. What if I can become someone that no one thinks I can be? And just me talking about that, I have the hair going up on my arms because it makes me just like, what if?
What we have always wanted to do is raise the standard for what it means to be customer-centric to such a degree that other organizations, whether they be other companies or whether they be hospitals or government agencies, whatever the organization is, they should look at Amazon as a role model and say, how can we be as customer-centric as Amazon?
Even competitors, I imagine, right?
Hopefully competitors as well. But if we could make, if that could be our legacy, that we kind of raise the general idea of what it means to be customer-centric, that would be a huge accomplishment. It would be accomplishing a mission that's much bigger than ourselves.
One thing I've learned and experienced is that, if you don't open up and you don't delegate, then you'll kill yourself. And if there's one thing that I've managed to understand is the art of delegation, because if I can pass on, to Claire Smith, to Arian, my palette, my understanding, my knowledge, then grab it, run it, and then pass it on to your team. Don't hold that inside.
A definite purpose must be accompanied by a definite plan for its attainment, followed by appropriate action. Now, you have to have a purpose, you have to have a plan, and you have to start putting that plan into action. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not too important that your plan be sound. It is, in fact, it's not too important. Because if you find that you've adopted a plan that's not sound, that's not working, you can always change. You can modify your plan. But it is very important that you be definite about what it is you're going after, what your purpose is. That must be very definite.
Diversified identity in some fashion. I think this is important so that your self-worth isn't only associated with your startup. That's probably a controversial recommendation. What that means is you should actually spend time involved with other skills. So in San Francisco, for instance, many startup founders I know who are very efficient and effective have their startup rock climbing, they get outside, they do a few things so that if one goes well, they can remain optimistic each week, which is very difficult if you're only directed at your startup.
You want to get your work ethic so high that people actually admire you. I'm going to ask you a question right now. Do people know you because of your unbelievable work ethic? If you can't answer yes to that, man, you're not going to get in that top 10%. You got to get to the top. People have to know you, not because, oh, he's a good salesman. Oh, he's a good this. Oh, he's an artist. Oh, he's a good pianist. Oh, he writes a great, story. No, dude, people need to know you for one major thing first. He works. He produces. The guy's there every day. The guy's pushing and shoving. Because the truth is, no matter how good your ideas are, how good your art is, or how good your skill set is, if you're not working, man, if you're not vibrating at a frequency that people say, my God, how does that guy do all that? If you're not vibrating at that rate, 10x levels, massive action, tremendous work ethic that's just a muscle now, and it's just a discipline in your life, and it's a normal way that other people think is abnormal. Ryan Seacrest, Tom Cruise, Oprah, Steven Spielberg, Donald Trump, still pumping and working as a billionaire. Look, if you're not working at that level, you're not going to make it. Get your work ethic in, man. It's the American way. Work ethic. Check it out.
So many people come up to me and say, Gary, it's so hard. I look at their Instagram, and they're not posting any of their content with hashtags, which is a by accident way to pick up exposure in a world where they have no money. When you have no money, when I took over my dad's business, I did $3 million a year, 10% gross profit, $300,000 before expenses. My first year marketing budget was $14,000. When you have no money, and I built that business from a $3 to a $60 million business in 5 years, I had to make every penny perfect. So I was right about email marketing in '96, and I was right, and because of that, I had 91% open rates. When Google AdWords came out, the day it came out, I paid 5 cents a click for words before anybody bid me up, and I was super right, and that worked.
How much is that luck versus preparation, and do you ever get anything wrong? What do you do when you make a mistake?
I get everything wrong. It's just that I can't recall it because once it's wrong, I'm moving on to the next thing. Like dwelling on what you f***ed up on is the quickest way for the next thing not to work. Right?
Yeah.
So I think I do everything. I mean, you know this. This is a fun thing to say. Some people in the back know this. I was a breakout YouTube star in the first year, 2006. I decided that the right strategy was to leave YouTube completely and go to Vidler because Vidler offered me equity in their company, and I've left an enormous amount of attention. I deviated from my intention thesis to do short-term economics and equity in a company, and I lost. When D-Rock finally came in my life 2 years ago and we started to try to build up my YouTube for the first time, I was sitting on 40,000 followers in a world where I could have had millions if I just stayed the course. So I make mistakes all the time. I'm reorging VaynerMedia every day because it's based on a mistake I made the prior year. I just don't give a fuck about my mistakes. Everybody else cares about your mistakes. If you're worried about your own mistakes, you've already lost.
And when I say life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, I really don't know if that's true. I'm just making a conscious choice to perceive challenges as something beneficial so that I can deal with them in the most productive way. You'll come up with your own style. That's part of the fun.
I don't like to think too far ahead.
So you haven't thought alternative
No, I don't like thinking
or...
too far ahead. People set like goals, long distance goals and shit. That's too much for me. I already feel like I'm living it. And then I just carry on doing that, carry on day by day, already living the final goal, the goal of being the world champion. I already carry myself like I'm a world champion. I already speak like I'm a world champion. And that's it, I just carry on day by day. So I'll take it as it comes. Again, like I said, you were asking me about the future. I'll let you know a little bit closer, you know what I mean? All I can see right now is the gold. That's all I can see.
You've got to enjoy what you do every day. And for me, that's working with very smart people. It's working on new problems. Every time we think, hey, we've had a little bit of success, we're pretty careful not to dwell on it too much because the bar gets raised.
If you can see it here and you have the courage enough to speak it, it will happen. So I see these shots, I see these sequences, and I don't shy away from them. A lot of times people believe in certain things, but they keep to themselves. They don't put it out there. If you truly believe in it, if you become vocal with it, you are creating that law of attraction and it will become reality.
The negativity is just negative. And there's no money in it. There's no future in being negative. Where's the solution? you know? I can't do that. We can't do that. That can't happen. This is wrong. That's wrong. Oh my gosh, taxes are too high. Taxes are too... Dude, it's negative. It is negative. It is negative. Look, there's so much abundance of negativity. That by itself tells you why there's no value in it.
Performing under pressure, whether it's me or anybody else, is the same. You know, I have the same pressures as anyone else. There's time, there's performance, there's financial. I mean, there's deadlines. My pressures are not unique. The situations may be different, or but everybody has the same kinds of pressures. But what I found, or what I find fascinating, is the interpretation of the stimuli. Let me explain. So I was watching the Olympics, this last Summer Olympics, and I was amazed at how bad the questions were that the reporters would ask all the athletes. And almost always, they asked the same question, whether they were about to compete or after they competed. Were you nervous, right? And to a T, all the athletes went, no, right? And what I realized is it's not that they're not nervous, it's their interpretation of what's happening in their bodies. I mean, what happens when you're nervous, right? Your heart rate starts to go, you sort of get a little tense, you get a little sweaty, right? You have expectation of what's coming, and we interpret that as, I'm nervous. Now, what's the interpretation of excited? Your heart rate starts to go, you're anticipating what's coming, right? You get a little sort of like tense. It's all the same thing. It's the same stimuli, except these athletes, these Olympic quality athletes, have learned to interpret the stimuli that the rest of us would say is nervous as excited. They all say the same thing. No, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. And so I've actually practiced it just to tell myself when I start to get nervous that this is excitement. Yeah. And so I used to speak in front of a large audience, and somebody would say, how do you feel? I used to say, a little nervous. Now when somebody says, how do you feel? I'm like, really excited, actually. And it came from just sort of telling myself, no, this is excitement. And it becomes a little bit automatic later on. But it's kind of a remarkable thing to deal with pressure by interpreting what your body is experiencing as excitement rather than nerves. And it's really kind of effective. It makes you want to rush forwards rather than pull back, and yet it's the same experience.
Talking about past and future and excessive emphasis on past and future in your life, yes, of course you need to have, there's nothing wrong with having a certain intention of what you want to achieve. Take steps towards it. It's part of living here in this dimension. You can't just say, I'm never going to plan anything anymore. Just take life as it comes. Well, some people try to do that, but they're not that happy either after a while. So then your life will get very diffused. And so to have an intention, to make a plan, perfectly fine. Either a short-term plan, like I'm going to meet you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. How would you ever meet anybody if we didn't have time? And future on a practical level, of course it's needed. The question is whether future takes over your mind. Being able to use it for practical purposes is of course great, but I call that clock time is fine, but psychological time is when the future takes over your mind and your entire thought patterns are geared only towards future, and you treat the present moment as either just a means to an end because it enables you to get to the next one. You're always reaching out, so to speak, internally to the next, yet never quite here, always looking for some fulfillment there, so you can never embrace the fullness of now, or you make the now into even an enemy. Some people are always unhappy. Perhaps we all know one or two people like that.
3.
Who are, wherever they are, they're complaining is never quite right. Wherever they are or whoever they are with, after a little while, they're very uncomfortable again. It should be somewhere else. You know the bumper sticker that you see in some cars, in the various versions of it, says, I'd rather be golfing. And then another one says, I'd rather be fishing. I'd rather be this, I'd rather be there. When I visited the spiritual teacher Ram Dass, who lives in Hawaii, he has a bumper sticker on it. Ram Dass was the person who, in the 70s, wrote the book Be Here Now. Anyway, he has a bumper sticker on his car that says, I'd rather be here now. And then you realize you can still pursue whatever an intention where you want to get to, a plan. I call that, it's a bit like a journey. Your life is a journey. You're going, you know you want to go from here to there. Whether you're going to get there, we don't know. Maybe on the way you'll branch out to somewhere else. But at least you have a certain direction. It's good to have some direction in your life. But while you are traveling, if your destination takes up most of your attention and you're continuously focusing on there, you miss all the journey, really. You can't enjoy the journey anymore. And most of your life is the journey. The arriving is relatively rare. The wedding, and a few more graduation, but so those moments are not the far and few between. So the rest is the journey. And if you can't enjoy the journey, which means the step you're taking at this moment is really the most important thing. Yes, of course, you know you're going that way, but this step is still to be enjoyed, because that's ultimately your whole life consists of the step you're taking at this moment. There is never anything else.
The reason that most people are not successful or not wealthy is not because they set their goals too high and miss them. It's because they set them too low and hit them. Get that? It's not because you set your goals too high and miss. You set your goals too low and you hit them. And you get caught up in the average daily struggle of averagism and mediocrity. That's what kills people. Everybody raise your hand for a second, please. Raise your hand. Now raise it as high as you can. I'm gonna crouch so I can see, okay? Now just raise it a bit higher, everyone, higher. Why the hell did that happen? I say raise it as high as you can, and everyone says, okay, then a little bit higher. Okay, well, if you really mean it, right? You get it? It's that extra inch. That's where you want to set your goal. Not pie in the sky and out of control like it's never going to happen, because that's a load of crap too. People that set those sort of goals, they abandon those goals, and we'll get to that later. But the idea here is you want to set the goals just above your comfort zone. So now think about it for a second. Think about your goals right now. How do you set them? Are you setting them very low and hitting them? If that's the case, then give yourself a 10. Are you setting goals that don't inspire you? Some people set goals that might be high, but they're crappy goals. They're not the sort of goals that make you jump out of bed in the morning, make you want to go to work for yourself, to secure the future, not just for you, but for your family. So you don't have to compromise or acquiesce to anybody unless you love them, unless you want to. That's freedom. You know, money's just a mechanism to get there.
There are no justified resentments. And this is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. I was in a group one time of drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was one of the people that was a sponsor and leading this group. And the sign on the wall said, there are no justified resentments in this group. And what I said to that group that night was, no matter what anybody says to you here, no matter what kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you may encounter showing up in your life, there are no justified resentments. Meaning that if you carry around resentment inside of you about anything or about anyone, and I'm talking about the person that you lent money to and hasn't paid you back, I'm talking about the person in your life that you feel was abusive in your life, I'm talking about the person who walked out on you and left you for somebody else, I'm talking about all of the things that you have justified in your heart and in your life that you have the right to be resentful about. And I'm suggesting to you that those resentments will always end up harming you and creating in you a sense of despair. I've often said that no one ever dies from a snake bite. The snake bite will never kill you. You cannot be unbitten. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. But it's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite that will end up destroying you.
I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the education summit for Microsoft, I would say that 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated? So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, you know, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune, and it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked number one. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement.